Hi, I'm Skinny Cheeks. Today I'll be talking about the status effect and Arcanist changes for update 41. If you do want my initial reactions to the full patch notes, I have it over on my Twitch page. I'll put the link in the comments. It was rather long and I'm currently sick, so it really wasn't the best for putting into a video here for YouTube, but the option is there for anyone that wants to check out that full unedited version. For here on YouTube, I'm going to be taking the patch notes apart in more bite-sized chunks to dig in a little bit deeper into the important changes, so expect quite a few videos coming out to get it all covered. To start off, we'll go through the Arcanist class changes as well as the updates to status effects. So the big one to start off is the change to Fatecarver. They reduced the damage done by this ability and its morphs by 7% per tick. And then for the pragmatic Fatecarver morph, they reduced the potency of the damage shield that this morph offers by 16%. Fixed an issue where this shield did not have a max health limit like other shields. The shield is now limited to 50% of your max health. So let's go ahead and read the developer comment here. Now that the Arcanist has been out for over half a year, we're utilizing a lot of the data we're seeing to make cautious adjustments to the class. Our goals here are to slightly peel back the ease of damage production the class has in hopes to incentivize slightly more complex rotations to regain the damage, while simultaneously cleaning up some morph power disparity and oversight, with pragmatic being a little too defensively powerful and not following typical damage shield behaviors. Now, I don't think that this is really going to incentivize more complex rotations to regain the damage, as the core of what is strongest on an Arcanist still seems to remain the same. I will go through a side-by-side comparison from update 40 to 41 a little later in this video, but for now, let's go ahead and look at the next change. Psychic Lesion reduced this passive's increase to applying status effects to 55%, down from 75%, to make up for the status effect buffs in this update. So let's go ahead and take a look at those status effect changes that they're referring to. Most of the status effects were buffed up by quite a bit for update 41. All of the direct damage ones essentially doubled in damage, with some interesting side effects added to some of them as well. So for concussed, on top of the double damage, it will hit even harder to enemies that have been recently concussed. I can see this adding in quite a bit of damage for sorcerers who tend to proc this condition quite often. For diseased, not only was the damage increased, but it also deals its damage in a 6-meter AoE instead of just single target. So this is probably going to be the go-to now for AoE fights. For overcharged, on top of the double damage, it now has a bit of extra magicka that it returns. And just a quick note, these status effects still have their original functions as well. These are just the listed changes. So with overcharged here, for example, it still applies that magicka steal. Personally, I think the magicka return here is a little bit too low. It doesn't seem quite as interesting as some of the other additions. For Sundered, again, the damage was doubled, and now on top of that minor breach to the enemy, you'll also get a bonus 100 weapon and spell damage for 4 seconds each time that it activates. And then Chilled was also doubled, but this was the only one out of the 5 to not get an additional effect added onto it. And I think it's probably because it already has the unique Frost Staff interactions and the unique Warden interactions as well. All right, for the other 3 damage over time status effects, Burning was reduced a tiny bit, but it still should be a very high DPS contributor. Poisoned was changed to have execute scaling now, but from the early test results, it looks like it provides roughly the same damage. The overall ticks are a little bit higher on average, but not a whole lot. It will just be weighted more towards the back end of fights, which is actually a really good thing, as in general, most fights are easier at the start and harder at the ending. So having it weighted more towards the end is a nice change there if overall the damage is not going to be too different from what it was before. And then Hemorrhaging was changed to now stack up to 3 times if you apply it again before it runs out, sort of like the way that Carve used to function with its bleed stacks. So for those that apply it quickly enough, this will be a nice buff to the damage from Hemorrhaging over what we had in the previous patch. I've already seen this well over 10k DPS on Wardens from Nightingale's post on the forums, and from the comparison we'll look at for Arcanists, it appears to be a pretty nice buff there as well. They did nerf the charge trait by a fair bit as well, since it would have really pulled it far out ahead of the other options in its old form, but I'll get into some speculation on how that might look a little bit later. For now, let's take a look at how these changes are going to affect our damage overall on the Arcanist. Rye has already done some testing on the PTS and has some data for us to look at here, so shout out to him for letting me share this with you guys. I'll have his parse for update 41 linked in the description below as soon as I see that go live. But the big takeaways, beam damage is down some, but really isn't a drastic loss in my opinion. It's still by far the top contributor to his damage. Also a little bit less crits here on the beam in update 41 than on the update 40 parse. So the difference is actually a little bit smaller than what's shown here. And actually overall the crits were worse on the newer parse. So the overall results should be a little bit more even here. I think with evened out crits, the new parse would still be around 130k-ish. Burning did drop a bit as expected from the nerf to the charged trait. He went from 83 ticks there down to just 69 ticks. Nice. Poisoned was right around the same damage as before. The average ticks were a little higher, but again, less overall procs due to the nerf to charged. And then the bleed damage was really pumped up quite a bit here. I'm not sure if he just got a bit lucky with the amount of ticks or what, but quite a few more than in update 40, and the average damage per tick is quite a bit higher too. I do have a hunch that double charged instead of the Nern charge that we're used to might pull out ahead. I haven't seen this on the Arcanists yet, but with charged getting nerfed, but the amount of power that charged enables getting buffed, I wonder if really stacking into it to play into those status effects won't be the best way to go now. And then the final change that we'll talk about with the Arcanist is with the Imperfect Ring. They increased the radius of this ability and the Fulminating Rune Morph to 6 meters up from 5 to better match their visual effects. And the Rune Break synergy from all versions of this ability is also 6 meters up from 5. Then the Rune of Displacement morph increased the radius of this morph to 10 meters up from 8 to better match its visual effects. So no real damage change here with this, but just a bit larger AoE radius for both of the morphs. So overall, I think the pieces have moved around a little bit, but the overall feeling of the Arcanist is pretty much the same. I took mine into the new dungeons yesterday on the PTS and I couldn't really tell a difference. Beam still felt amazing. I honestly don't think this is going to have too big of an impact. Overall damage will be slightly down, but Arcanists are still uniquely bringing a massive amount of AoE and single target damage with the same setup, and that's something that not a lot of other classes can do. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to keep these videos coming out until we've covered all of the important changes on the PTS. I'm actively looking at the new sets as well and figuring out exactly how those work so I can give some good feedback on them before I post a video on that. But those are coming as well. Hopefully doing the videos in this way will allow me to be a bit more thorough while also having the information come out in easy to digest chunks. Big shout out to my current Patreon supporters and YouTube members. The contributions help a ton to keep the website and YouTube channel going. And a special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Cougars Bay and the Cougar City Guild, the Order of War Guild, Cantankerous Cat, Shady, Iffy, Blake1816, Mordecai 1212, Santanico, Vidridi, Florian, Phoenix, Nalandia, Unemployed, Chryseliana, Cha-Cha, Technical KO, Cap, Danco77, and Pletpron. Thanks again and see you later. Bye.